I'm Francisco Rodriguez, the Chancellor of the Los Angeles Community College District, and I'm proud to be here, East LA College. Let's give it up for East LA College. Good afternoon again, and welcome to all of you today, and to the beautiful Student Center here at East LA College. We also welcome those who are joining us live on Facebook, and we ask them and thank them for joining us in this very, very important and timely conversation. As we move through this afternoon's program, I want us to think about some of the questions that we're going to ask and engage our expert panelists of practitioners and scholars here at East LA College as we unveil this magnificent, timely, powerful report. We come together to discuss this recent report, and there are, I believe, copies at your location from the Campaign of College Opportunity, for College Opportunity. It's called Left Out: How Exclusion in California's Colleges and Universities Hurt Our Values, Our Students, and Our Economy. And why not debut it, if you will, distribute it in East LA? It was this month, 50 years ago, where students walked out of class demanding better classrooms, better prepared teachers, better facilities, and curriculum that reflected their experience. And those of us in this room and who are watching and who are beneficiaries of affirmative action, student services programs, all of us should give thanks to those courageous students who said, at 10 a.m., we're walking out. This report that you have, that we have now, that's been widely disseminated, is a powerful and sobering reminder that in essence is a call to action for all of us who consider ourselves leaders and policymakers. It's not hyperbole to state that our nation's strength, economic health and prosperity, and democracy depend on the inclusion and success of all of its participants. The report points to the fact that while our educational system have made gains in the racial and gender diversity makeup of our college students, we still have persistent gaps in college access and success for students of color. As the report also spells out in very clear and compelling terms that our campus faculty and leadership do not reflect the racial and gender diversity of our students. Many indeed are being left out. Central to improving outcomes for students is ensuring that those of us who lead, who teach, who govern, who administer at our public colleges and universities understand the needs, experiences, and strengths of our current and future student body, the assets that our students bring to the classroom, that inclusivity brings, so that we can forge policies, practices, and experiences that better serve them. This understanding comes from having more racially and gender inclusive leadership at our colleges and universities. As an educator at the University of California, California State University, and now at the California Community Colleges, I have witnessed the multiple and tangible benefits of having a diverse faculty, administration, and students of color on campus. Not just to the institution, but most importantly, to the learning and engagement of students. I believe that it is our collective responsibility to purposely serve our higher education community and at the same time to challenge it. We have perhaps the best opportunity as educators to help students eradicate and overcome social and racial injustice and to empower the least educated and poorest in our communities. While there have been some gains, some modest gains, and we need to recognize those through the efforts that have been made, the representation and student success, equity, and opportunity gap still exists. And I would contend that the lack of consensus and leadership on issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion has affected the performance of underrepresented students, as their outcomes have remained largely unchanged for many decades. So we gather here to think about our charge, our mission, our challenge. Without another major shift in diversity, equity, and inclusion in higher education, our profession runs the risk of further bifurcation and passive perpetuation of racial inequality. The recommendation in this report, and there are several, policy and practitioner recommendations, moves us in the right direction. And I'd like us to consider those very carefully. At the Los Angeles Community College District, we recognize and are committed to gender and racial diversity at all levels of institutional leadership. We know that having administrators and faculty of color that reflect the diversity of the students that we serve is not only beneficial to students of color, but to the entire student body. It is indeed educationally purposeful. Let me thank the Campaign for College Opportunity for having the audacity to put this report out, to do it in clear and compelling ways that communicates a message that the time for change is now. So with those opening remarks, we've got a fantastic agenda and program laid out. The speakers, the panelists are amazing. It's going to give us an opportunity to interact with some of the best minds around this subject. So let me now ask President Marvin Maravilla Martinez, who is the president of East Los Angeles College, to join us and to give you a welcome. President Martinez.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to East LA College. It's great to have you here. I certainly want to thank the College Campaign for Opportunity for looking at East LA College to be the host of this event. I'm sure that as you walked into the campus and you saw our student body and our staff, it's one of the most diverse campuses probably in the state. In many ways, we're the exception. I love to tell you that all the 114 colleges, community colleges in the state of California look like this. We are, no doubt, one of the most diverse, and we're very proud of that. You know, when I first looked at the report, my first thoughts that came into my mind was, I knew this was right. And so finally, it's been put together into research, and it shows a lot of the information that we might have known for a long time that we maybe just eyeballed by going to meetings and so forth. So it's great to finally see a report. So thank you for putting this report. I know we're going to get to more detail about it. A few things I'd like to note for all of you. You know, as the college president here, you know, the commitment to diversity starts at the top. It starts from my boss, and that's Chancellor Rodriguez, and it trickles down to me as the college president, and I relay that to everyone else. But it has to start at the top. And because it starts at the top, it makes it easier for the rest of the staff to want to implement it and to embrace it. At the top is where we have to say that we embrace diversity, we value it, we see it as very important. And this campus is diverse because of those reasons. It didn't magically happen. It happened because there's a commitment, and we're committed to doing that every day. So, you know, I've been fortunate that over the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to hire nearly 140 new faculty members. So 140, just to give you perspective, that's bigger than the faculty members from many of our campuses. I'm very proud of the fact that we have a very diverse faculty. And as a result, we've been able to have departments that didn't have, for example, any women at East LA College. Now they have women. We have been able to increase the number of, obviously, Latino and African American, Asian American, and it's been a planned effort. It has not happened by accident. We've been in conversations with our department chairs. We've been in conversations with our academic senate so this is what we do together so we can ensure that it's happening. We try to do as best as we can to diversify our adjunct faculty. I know we're going to get into more detail about that today, but most of the faculty that we hire on the campus come from the adjuncts, from the part-time faculty members. And we have to do everything that we can to diversify that pool. Because naturally, those faculty members are the ones who have the inside track, because they know the campus, they know everyone else, they know the committee that's about to interview them and maybe hire them. So no doubt we've made a huge commitment to doing that. One program I'm going to talk about a little bit later today is we have a program called the Career Guidance Counseling Assistant, otherwise known as the CGCA. By the way, most of the counselors that we've hired come through that pathway. What this program is about, it gives an opportunity for individuals who want to be counselors at East LA College, an opportunity to be exposed to the campus. They come, they are learning what the counseling department is doing, they get to meet other counselors, they get to meet their fellow colleagues, they become empowered, they feel great, and they apply. And by the way, we hire many of them. A good number of our counselors come through that venue. So I'm going to get into that as to what we do, but I want to give you a glimpse. I want to give you a glimpse that explains to you how programmatic and how strategic we have become in order to diversify our faculty and staff. I look forward to hearing from the other speakers. Again, welcome to the campus. If you get a chance to walk the campus, please walk the campus. We're very proud of it. We spent a lot of money on it, but it looks wonderful. Students enjoy it. So once again, everybody, welcome to East LA College.
Thank you so much, President Martinez. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Facebook. How are you all feeling? Good. My name's Audrey Dow, and I'm the Senior Vice President with the Campaign for College Opportunity. And being here on ELAC's campus is coming home for me. You know, this is where my parents, my mom and dad, actually came through the PACE program to get their Associate of Arts degree, which allowed them to keep working and get their degree at the same time. And I'm so happy that my mom is actually here with us today, back at her alma mater, to be here at ELAC. This is where I came when I was a student at Garfield High School. To the summer to participate in the Escalante program and take pre-calculus and trigonometry and really set my pathway to college. And it was because this campus was here that allowed me to do that. It's also where many of my colleagues from Garfield High School came for college. This is what gave them their leg up to whatever their next step in life was. So I'm so thrilled that we could be here today at ELAC. That remains a real constant source of hope and a constant source of college opportunity for this community that is so important to California and is so important to the world. Today we're going to see a lot of data, lots of pie charts and lots of bar graphs, which thankfully I'm not going to be presenting on. Michelle will be presenting on. But as one of my board members said, who's the president of the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, he said, you know, the Left Out report is not just about demographics. You know, it's about helping our college leaders, our governor, our system leaders understand that diversity in our faculty, in our academic senates, and in our campus leadership is directly tied to student success. And if we don't act on that, and if we don't work to diversify that, then we're really letting down our students and our future economy. But there is no getting around it. Data is super important. Data is vital. And collecting and reporting on that data that can transform our policies and practices to better serve students is often difficult to do. And oftentimes, it often draws criticism because it shines a light on things that we don't often want to talk about, things that are uncomfortable to talk about, and things that really challenge the way that we've been doing things all along. That's not the way we do things. We don't want to talk about that. But if we don't look at the data, then we don't know where we are and we don't know where we can go. And so I'm so pleased today to start our time together by honoring two of our 2018 Beacon of Light Award honorees, Dr. Karthik Ramakrishnan and Dr. Estela Ben-Simon. The Beacon of Light Award is given to California leaders who, through their research, shine a bright light on critical race issues in higher education. Their courageous and visionary work provides a clearer picture, guidance, and solutions to the most pressing racial equity challenges we face in California. And indeed, Dr. Ramakrishnan and Dr. Ben-Simon fit that bill. I'd like to first introduce Dr. Ramakrishnan, who's the Associate Dean of the UC Riverside School of Public Policy and a Professor of Public Policy and Political Science. He's the founder and director of the Center for Social Innovation at UC Riverside, and his research focuses on civic participation, immigration policy, and the politics of race, ethnicity, and immigration in the United States. I came to know Dr. Ramakrishnan when the Campaign for College Opportunity was putting together its State of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders in higher education. And this was a real task for us. You know, the campaign had really been challenged to say that we had to do the work of breaking down the Asian category in higher education into subgroups to really understand what was happening and to bust through this model minority myth. And it was Dr. Ramakrishnan that was pushing us every single way to push on the community colleges, to push on CSU, and to push on UC to give us their data, to implore them to understand why it was important to disaggregate Asian communities into 20 different subgroups, because there we would find the truth. There we would find that there are groups that are performing so poorly, and we're doing nothing from a state policy perspective or a campus resource perspective to serve these students that are vital to our community. And that's the life's work, I think, of Dr. Ramakrishnan, bringing light to what's hidden so we can do better. So Dr. Ramakrishnan, I invite you up to join us and accept your award and say a few words.
Oh my goodness.
You actually have
This
an
is
award.
and it's amazing.
There you go. Yes.
Oh, sure. Oh, right. You guys are good on branding. Thank you, Audrey, Michelle, and the rest of the Campaign for College Opportunity team. I was floored when I heard about this because I just think of this as just important work to do, and none of us do this for the recognition. So and we spend countless hours in all sorts of fights, and I don't think these are not. I mean, sometimes they are political fights, but it's a lot of work. You would think that the matter of trying to get data to get to the truth, to make sure that policies are well informed, would be something that everyone believes in. That everyone believes in evidence-based policymaking. But it's not just at the national level where this is a challenge. We find this even at the state level and even in our institutions of higher education. And as someone who's an associate dean, I know full well the kind of juggling act that many of us have to do, given our professional roles, our institutional roles, but also our roles as members of society who care deeply about issues of justice. So I actually just want to thank the Campaign for College Opportunity for their consistent work in not only bringing truth to power, but to constantly be that voice to not only lift up what is working, but to have those uncomfortable conversations. This is something that Robert Ross, I serve on the board of the California Endowment, and he recently put out a blog post in which he talked about one of the board meetings where we had to lean in on uncomfortable conversations. And I really like that imagery, because uncomfortable conversations are something that many of us in administration think of as a problem, as something that would go away. But these are precisely the kind of uncomfortable conversations we need to be having. So thank you for doing that in a consistent way. And I'm honored to receive this award in such distinguished company.
Before we go on to our second honoree, I do want to recognize that we have a couple of VIPs in our presence. So I want to recognize Trustee Zeke Hernandez with Rancho Santiago Community College District. Thank you for being with us. Trustee Sonia Lopez with Compton Community College District. We have President Denise Nolden of Southwest College. Thank you for being with us. And Ms. Faith Lee, who is with Assemblymember Chris Holden's office. Thank you for being with us. Our second honoree, who is also a part of our program today, is Dr. Estela Ben-Simon. Dr. Estela Ben-Simon is the Dean's Professor in Educational Equity and the Director of the Center for Urban Education at the Rossier School of Education at the University of Southern California. Go Trojans. You know, when I think about our Beacon of Light Award, I think about Dr. Ben-Simon. I think of her as that lighthouse on a dark coast, always there, warning us of potential danger, but also leading us to safe passage. What she warns us about are the perils of not being equity-minded. of leaving our students and therefore our state and country behind because we fail to talk about race and because we fail to see how our structures, our policies, and practices manufacture racial inequality. Her life's work is our beacon. She's given us the equity scorecard, working with colleges nationally and internationally to build equity-minded teams that not only know how to look at and disaggregate data by race and ethnicity, but how to act on it. She's defined terms for us. What does it mean to be equity-minded? And more recently, she's been leading sold-out institutes on equity in faculty hiring. She's been an advisor on nearly every report for the Campaign for College Opportunity. Thank you, and I'm sorry. And she generously gives of her time to strengthen our work. For the Left Out report we're discussing today, her center produced the toolkit that provides practical ways colleges can start addressing racial inequity in faculty hiring and campus leadership. You know, our team at the Campaign for College Opportunity is over 80% people of color, over 80% women, but we are 100% in agreement that you are our shero. So thank you so much for all the work that you do. You tell it like it is because it's the right thing to do, and we're so pleased to honor you today. Thank you, Dr. Ben-Simon.
So, well, thank you very much for Audrey for that beautiful introduction. I am so touched by it, and because it was so genuine. And so there are a few things that I would like to say. I was thinking, you know, why is diversity important? Well, one thing is that if we didn't have diversity, we would not be here, because look at this organization, the Campaign for College Opportunity, led by these incredible women, Michelle Siqueiros, Audrey Dow, Leticia Bustillos, who's not here, but had a hand in writing this report. And the reason why we have this report is because they dare to do something that is different. And that is one of the reasons why diversity is so important. I also want to say that it is really momentous that 50 years after the walkouts, we're here today having this meeting. There are positive aspects to it. The fact that I was looking at the photos in the LA Times on Sunday, which had an article about the walkouts, and there were also articles about Cesar Chavez. Well, who would have thought that we would be having this meeting in La Avenida de Cesar Chavez? And to be having this meeting in a college that is primarily led by Latinx leaders, and also a district that is led by a Latino chancellor. So those are all great forms of progress. But on the other hand, 50 years have gone by, and we have a report that shows that we have a hyper-white system in its leadership and its faculty and in its academic senates for all three systems. And so we have to then ask, and I'm sure we will talk about it, is how could it be that we have espoused diversity as a value for the last 50 years, yet we may be seeing the diversity in our students, but we are certainly not seeing it in our leadership. And I thought about that last night. Why is that? Why are we so hyper-white? And the reason for that is that we have a locked system of hiring, and we have to unlock it. I say locked because it is almost destined in the way that it works to yield primarily white candidates. And this report, Left Out, is important because it shows that. It shows how pervasive it is. I also think that we have come to this point because even though this is 2017, 50 years after the walkout, there is still fear about talking about race directly. To even say white, sometimes it causes a great deal of defensiveness. So we need to get over that. Well, maybe not those of us who are here today, but we need to be able to talk about race, directly. And the other thing that I would like to say is that just as we see pedagogical experience, work experience as essential requirements for faculty positions, for instance, we need to see that being a Latina or a Latino or being Black or being Asian American or Pacific Islander or Native American, those are qualities that fit our current situation, because we need faculty who are going to be able to see themselves in their students. And until we have that, we're not going to be able to achieve the ambitious goals of the Cal State University system, the graduation initiative, the vision for success, which is the California Community College strategic plan, aims to close gaps in 10 years, to increase transfer by 35%. I would say that none of that will happen unless we change the color of our faculty. So thank you again for providing this report, which gives us the permission and gives us the evidence to talk about something that we're so reluctant to speak about. Thank you again.
Hello, everyone.
I introduce Michelle. Now, okay. Let me just go off the script. So we were giving a script, and obviously I did not read it carefully enough. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Michelle Cicadas, the president of the Campaign for College Opportunity, that has been, when I look at their accomplishments and under Michelle's leadership, the influence that this organization has had in changing the community college system in California, it is amazing. They have changed basic skills. They have changed transfer. They have, and I'm sure that I am forgetting other, now they're going to change the hiring system. How many organizations can claim so much impact? It is amazing. And I, they say that I was their hero. Well, I would like to be like them. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce to you this exceptional president of the Campaign for College Opportunity.
Thank you, Esteban. Thank you, everyone. I was told that I should do this from the stage, but I'm not going to, because that feels like it's too far from all of you. First, I just want to say it really has been such a privilege to serve as president of the Campaign for College Opportunity, to get to work with amazing leaders and board members, and to honor true beacons of light. And I don't want to forget today, so I really want to kick off by saying that while I'm up here looking great for all of you and presenting this information, it is my amazing team that makes it happen. And if I look good and sound good, it's because they make me look good and sound good. So I want to actually ask all of my staff to stand up who are here. You heard from Audrey. She's my shiro as well. Dr. Abby Bates is one of the lead researchers on this report, so all the tough questions to her, please. All of you know Linda, who just works phenomenally across Southern California to make sure that our voice is heard, to talk to trustees and other college leaders about the important changes that need to happen. And in the back of the room, they try to hide, but they're the ones that raise the money, answer the phones, send out the emails, verify the research. Thank you, Fernando, Stacy, Jackie, and Shay, who's undercover over there as well. I am incredibly proud of the work of the Campaign for College Opportunity. I think some of you are familiar with what we do because we did pass historic transfer reform in 2010 that created the Associate Degree for Transfer, really to address what we were frustrated by, which is that it takes way too long for most students, Audrey's mom notwithstanding, to transfer from community college to a four-year university. And that was an attempt to fix that. Several years ago, we really zeroed in on remedial education, and what an unfortunate black hole that is for a lot of students who get trapped there, most of whom are students of color, are first in their families to go to college, who come to college with hope and end up in a remedial math course that requires at least 4 years to get out of. And so that's certainly not a path to opportunity for students that are seeking hope. And we've been there for every single budget battle to ensure that there's more funding in the state budget so that we provide greater access for students, that we ensure that the UC grows its enrollment, even when sometimes the UC doesn't want to grow enrollment. And we've also fought the fight to protect financial aid and funding for undocumented and DACA students in our state. So I'm incredibly proud that I get paid to do incredible work, and obviously your support is critical to making that happen. Today, we get to release an amazing labor of love. For the last 2 years, we have been looking at demographic data of college faculty, of academic senate bodies, of college leaders, of our governance bodies to produce this report. You get the embargoed summary, but I do invite you all to go to our website where you can read the full report, where you can access an appendix that actually has every single community college, Cal State, UC campus, and gives you a snapshot for every one of those. You can also go to a website my amazing team created where you can compare colleges to that region to see if they're doing better in terms of diversity or worse. So there's a lot of tools on the website. I already told you a little bit about our work. When we started the research, one of the first questions that folks approached us with was, well, why? Why does it matter? Why is diversity important? And you can read the reasons above, and you've heard from Dr. Ben-Simone, and you will hear from others that will tell you why it's important. But one of the things I do want to communicate and leave you with is that while I'm confident in defending diversity, I actually want us to put that question back on people who ask it, which is, why is diversity not important? Why is it acceptable that we have institutions that are not inclusive and reflective of our population? I think that's a much more interesting question. And actually, that question should produce better answers in terms of how do we better serve students. But at the end of the day, as Dr. Ben-Simone and others have mentioned, the reason it matters is because students succeed when they feel like they belong, and when they feel included in a campus environment that may be foreign to them, especially if they never knew anyone that even went to college. So I share a picture of me when I graduated from college many, many years ago, and that's actually my graduation cap. So I love that we're on Avenida Cesar Chavez, because for me, that was the motto that got me through college. When I showed up at Pitzer College, my entire life I had been told that I was really smart, one of the smartest in the class, that I was definitely college material. But I walked on that campus and looked around and didn't know anybody that was there, didn't see many faces that looked like mine, went into my first political studies class. Surprise, surprise, I wanted to major in political studies. And on that first day, I felt completely lost. The first assignment that was given by Professor Sullivan, I didn't understand. I read it probably 5 times. I was very dedicated. And then I wrote an essay because that was the assignment. But I didn't understand enough to write a good essay. And in fact, when he gave it back to me, there was a little note written at the top that said, "Come see me." There was no grade. So I knew that was a very bad sign. And I figured that they were on to me, that they realized I did not belong, and that I was definitely not college material. But when I walked into Professor Sullivan's office, he turned to me and he said, "Hey, tell me what happened with this essay." And so I decided that honesty was the best policy, and I shared, well, I didn't understand the piece. And he said, "Oh, that's no big deal, so let's talk about it." And for the next 30 minutes to an hour, he talked about the piece with me. Not once did Professor Sullivan make me feel like I was the dumbest person on that campus, which I did feel many, many times. Not once did he tell me that I didn't belong. This was a professor that was white and was clearly equity-minded, because he didn't see me as somebody that couldn't succeed. And that was very important. My other significant moment on campus was when, after feeling like, do I really belong, I watched a young Latino professor walk by, and another student ran up to me and said, "Hey, you know that's Professor Calderon." And I was like, "He's a professor?" And it was the first time I had ever seen somebody that was a professor that was Latinx like me. And that just changed my entire perspective and showed me that I belong. And that's why this research is important, because we need those indicators that show us that we do belong. And that's why we do this work. I also just briefly wanted to talk about Oscar-winning movie, Coco, and Black Panther, because I think they also demonstrate the power of inclusivity, not only in Hollywood, the power of telling our stories, the power that we all feel as people of color, seeing our stories told. I always love telling Coco's story because, as some of you who may have followed this, when Disney decided that they were going to make Coco, at first they were going to call it Dia de los Muertos. And Disney, being Disney, went to go copyright Dia de los Muertos. I always say this. I'm like, sometimes you can really tell that they don't have any people of color at the table. Because you all know, and we all felt, the outrage of having Disney copyright a cultural tradition and holiday that's so important to us as Mexicans, as Mexican Americans. The beautiful thing was, though, that the creators didn't get defensive. They actually realized that they made a misstep, and they made sure to hire a Latino Mexican-American director, and then they created a team of cultural advisors that would inform the movie and make it better, which they obviously did because millions of us went to see it, Mexico adored it, and the Oscars were granted. So Black Panther, similarly, is also proof that you can have an entirely African American cast and you can make over $100 million in just 2 weekends of releasing a movie. Coco was one of the top movies in China. Black Panther is likely to go down in history as the best performing Marvel movie ever. And it really points to how important it is for us to have our stories told, and for us to have our stories told in a way that respects our culture, respects the attributes that we bring to the table. So I wanted to make sure that you heard the voices of students and other leaders who, in all honesty, are even better experts at talking about racial equality and inclusivity than we are at the campaign. And some of their voices are here in some of these slides. And because I hate when people read PowerPoint slides to me, know that I am not going to read them to you. But these are voices of leaders that talk about what it means to them and why this research is important. This sense of belonging and telling our story is critical as we share the data with you. So I'm going to start now with the data. I'm going to sort of give you some context. Today we're focusing in on community college data. So that is where we're going to zero in. You'll also get to see, as you have in front of you, a snapshot of East LA data. Please know that the report is full of data and information. And Audrey joked that, I would definitely handle that part. But there's a lot of data in the report on the Cal State system, on the UC system, on governance across higher education, some of which I'll cover, some of which I hope you'll refer to the report if I missed it. And then instead of taking questions during this part, we're going to save that for the panel conversation. So as we go up there, if there are questions to the report, please let me know. So this is what our student undergraduate population looks like in California. And you'll notice that the colors stay the same. So follow along by referring to the color blocks here. We have an incredibly diverse undergraduate student body, probably the most diverse in the world in terms of race and ethnicity. 69% of the students that go to college in California are students of color. So as we shared, we wanted to look at, what does the faculty and the senior leadership look like? This is the first pie here is community colleges. This is if we just looked at their faculty, these are tenured positions, and their leadership, you can see that the majority are white. This is what it looks like at the Cal State University. And this is what it looks like at the University of California. But let's talk about community colleges. Obviously, the biggest segment of our higher education system. You can see almost 2.3 million students enrolled. 44% are Latinx, followed by 27% who are white, 6% African American, and 14% are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, the AANHPI acronym that you see there. So what does campus leadership look like at the community college system? So this is the chart, this is the pie, this is what students look like. This is what tenured faculty in the community college system look like. Again, student enrollment. A lot of what we heard is, well, newer faculty, adjuncts, they're more diverse. That's your answer. Not more diverse. And this is true across the three systems of higher education. So somebody mentioned this is where we hire the tenured faculty. If this pool is not diverse, then there's obviously not going to be much greater diversity in the next few years or the next 10 or 20 years. This is student enrollment versus academic senates. These bodies make really important decisions around curriculum, course requirements, governance decisions that impact all of the students, and yet very few people of color serve as academic senators in the system. Students compared to senior leadership of our community colleges. And here is where we see actually the best diversity, and still obviously not reflective of our student population. I think, are we on the East LA slides yet, Abby? No, this is still. Okay, gotcha. So this is system leadership. So again, student enrollment, and then academic senates for the system. So this looks at that body of the academic senate that serves the community college system. The previous one looked at academic senates. If you looked at 114 academic senate bodies, we added those up. That was the previous chart. This is just the academic senate for the community college system. Very influential, obviously part of what makes policy decisions statewide. And then the third pie looks at community college district board of trustees. We saw that there's a couple here, but again, also huge mismatch in terms of the leadership that provides oversight for our community college districts is not very diverse either. These are elected, as many of you already know. So again, students, and now we're looking at the chancellor's office. So for the community college chancellor's office, we also see that there's a long way to go. Even though we did have the first Latinx chancellor named to that position in 2016, there's still not a lot of diversity in the chancellor's office. And this is the Board of Governors. So this is the body that is appointed by the governor of California, and that body is incredibly undiverse. So you see that there's, 77% of Board of Governors are white, 12% are Latinx, 12% African American, not a single Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. Also wanted to share that the data analysis included a review of gender. And in a few weeks, we will actually cross-tab that data by gender and race. And Dr. Abby Gates just took a deep breath right here as she's preparing that analysis. But just a quick look at gender, we also see, as I mentioned earlier, 54% of our undergraduate students are female across all of higher education. And yet females are incredibly underrepresented as well. And here you can see the top bar is Board of Governors, 59% are men. The Community College Chancellor's Office, 55%, a little more equitable. Academic Senate, also predominantly men, 53%, and Community College Trustees, 57% male. So now we're going to share your data here at East LA College. As you heard President Martinez mention, this is one of the more diverse campuses across the system. 67% of students here are Latinx, followed by 13% who are Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, followed by 10% who are unknown. So these are folks that choose not to share their racial category, and then 4% African American. So we'll now compare your student population and demographics to some of the leadership here. Tenured faculty. This is one of the better looking pies across the state. You can definitely see that you do have a very diverse faculty. Non-tenured faculty. This was really interesting. I think one of the colleges that had the most unknown in the non-tenured faculty. So something to think about. See, if you don't look at your data, you don't know why are folks not sharing their racial identity. And then senior leadership, 80% Latinx, 20% white. Here you can see where President Martinez, maybe some Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander hires are appropriate, as well as African Americans not represented in your leadership team. And then the Academic Senate. We thought you'd be interested in seeing sort of these like general analysis. When you count up all the community colleges, the CSU and the UC campuses, there's 146 of them. 51% of those faculty and leadership bodies are majority white. And in fact, if you look at from those 146, 121 have majority white tenured faculty. 126 of those 146 colleges have majority white, not non-tenured faculty. Again, that sort of myth that non-tenured faculty are more diverse, I mean, all you have to do is just show this data point. Clearly, the non-tenured faculty is actually less diverse. 138 of those 146 colleges have majority white academic senates. 78 of those colleges have majority white senior leadership bodies. So here you can see that the one area where we tend to be doing better is in senior leadership roles, but a huge gap everywhere else. So we did want to highlight some of the really good bright spots that are happening in higher education in our state that are definitely cause for celebration. And this would be one of them. When you look at the UC and the CSU and the number of master's and doctorate degrees that are awarded, you come up with 150,000 just during this 4-year time period, and more than half were awarded to people of color. So again, when you hear that pipeline argument, and we can have the conversation, and we will, about qualifications and what's qualified, just remember this figure. We are producing in California people of color with masters and PhDs. And certainly we could do more and better there. But that's not an excuse. The other bright spots that I wanted to talk about before I move into kind of action steps is really that we're doing really well at community colleges in terms of college presidents that are women. So almost at equity, we have a large number of college presidents that are women in both the community college and the Cal State system. That's really good news. But obviously, we're not satisfied, and the data do confirm what we've long known and suspected, that our campuses are not reflective of our student body, and even less reflective of California's population, right? And so one of our top recommendations is to the governor and the Senate Rules Committee that when he or she or they appoint members for the UC Board of Regents, the CSU Board of Trustees, or the Community College Board of Governors, that they need to be putting more women on these bodies and more people of color. We also obviously want leaders to own that responsibility, as President Martinez mentioned, to think about his hires and how he can select a much more diverse team. Another core recommendation we're making is around data. I shared with you that it took us over 2 years to collect data because racial data is not required to be reported by academic senates or senior leadership in higher education. We know easily the race of students and faculty, but we can't know that information as easily for the other categories. And again, if you're not looking at the data, how can you act on the data? And something that we have, a national expert here to talk about, Dr. Ben Simone and others, is really around hiring. Because clearly our hiring process isn't working. We're not producing a diverse faculty and leadership body, and so we need to practice hiring with equity in mind, and we need to make sure that we are evaluating qualifications around how do faculty and other leaders really reflect our students and contribute to their success. And I would say that we want all hires to be equity-minded. When you look at our campuses, when 2/3 of our students are students of color, every single person that interacts with those students needs to make sure that they value the assets that those students bring to the table and that they believe in their success, just like Professor Sullivan managed to believe in me even when I questioned my own talents. So I really want to talk about courageous leadership because, as others have said, these conversations can be uncomfortable. We don't want to talk about race. We all want to assume that we don't have any bias And I think part of it is being courageous and making sure that we have the courage to look at our own data and to see that maybe, and admit that maybe we should and could be doing better. If we don't come to the table with that kind of courage, it really, nothing is going to happen. Change is not going to happen. And so I especially liked Martin Luther King's words here. I believe I've borrowed or stolen this from Dr. Ben-Simone and her team at USC. So as a proud Bruin, I have lovely Trojan friends. And I love their leadership and commitment to this work. But the one thing I continue to say is that, you know, for the most part, folks generally say that they are supportive of diversity. They appreciate diversity. And yet, we completely tolerate its absence. Those two things can't happen, can't be both true. If we really appreciate diversity and love diversity, then we should not be tolerating its absence with excuses that I believe aren't valid. And yes, the fact that we're here today, 50 years after the East LA blowouts, was certainly not lost on us. And I think this is the kind of courage and inspiration that we all need, right? That these young high school students and the faculty like Sal Castro, who led them, had the courage to do whatever it took to make their voices be heard. And they didn't do it because they were going to be beneficiaries of a better education. Most of them were almost done with high school. Most of them were almost already not eligible to go to college. They did it because they wanted their little brothers and sisters to have a better shot than they ever got. And they did it so that we could be sitting in this room talking about how important it is to make sure that that opportunity continues to be available for others. So thank you for being here, for showing that you care about equity, and I suspect for being committed to not tolerating its absence. So with that, I'm going to invite our panelists up to the stage.
Okay, if our panelists can come up to the stage, that would be great. And while they do, I'm going to just say a couple brief things. I'll be facilitating the panel today. My name is Luke Wood. There, had to move it up a little bit. And I'm a faculty member at San Diego State University in our College of Education. And I co-direct a center with my colleague Frank Harris III, who was one of the quotes that you saw, called the Community College Equity Assessment Lab. And as part of the work that we do, we partner with community colleges to better help them understand the experiences that students face, particularly our underserved students, students of color, Black, Latino, Southeast Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander students. And oftentimes as part of that work, they describe their experiences as being isolated, alienated, and minoritized. And unfortunately, as a result of the disparities that this data show us, we know that we lose students. And partly the reason for that is a lack of belonging in institutions that really were never designed to serve them. And I think the quote that Michelle gave, that students succeed when they feel like they belong, is powerful because it's not just something we say, it's a truth. And we know that while we lose our students in large numbers, we also, these data show that the pipeline for faculty and for administrators is also very concerning. And so viewing this from kind of a systems level perspective, I always use this quote that helps me think about these issues. And whenever I see disparities in data, I use this quote from W. Edward Deming, that every system is perfectly designed to achieve the results that it gets. Every system is perfectly designed to achieve the results that it gets. And when we think about it from that perspective, we think about the fact that we have a system that is designed to produce these inequities that we see. But as also shown at the beginning of the presentation, things are improving, things are changing, though of course nowhere near as fast as they should be. But what we're doing in part of this work today is we're really part of a struggle for people of color in general to exist and to thrive in educational institutions. And it is a battle that we will win. It is a battle that we will win, that we are winning, we will be successful, but we have to ask ourselves as we do that, how many people will be lost before we do? How many of our students will leave school because they feel disaffected and a lack of belonging? How many of our faculty will leave before they are tenured or have decisions to be tenured or promoted? How many administrators will say, why do this? This isn't for me. Particularly when you see that balance between the executive leadership and the faculty senates who they have a loving relationship with. So I think with that in mind, we're going to go and talk to this incredible panel. I'm going to come up and join them, but before I do, I just want to introduce them. On the stage, you have, on my far left, on your far right, Michelle Siqueiros, the president of the Campaign for College Opportunity, who just gave us an amazing presentation. Dr. Estela Ben-Simon, the Dean's Professor of Educational Equity and Director of the Center for Urban Education at the Rossier School of Education at USC. Dr. Marvin, not Dr. Marvin, Alexa Victoriano, my order was messed up. Alexa Victoriano, who is a former student trustee for the Los Angeles Community College District, thank you. And Dr. Marvin Martinez, the president of East Los Angeles College. And what I'm going to have each of them do first is just to take a few moments, introduce themselves, and react to the report. And we'll start with Dr. Martinez.
Okay, now it's on. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Linda. I am super honored to be, be a part of this panel. I am a current ELAC student, so go Huskies. This is my second home community college. My first home college is actually Los Angeles Harbor College, so yes. Just looking at the data and just being part of the system and also being a student, it's kind of disheartening, but it's, as a student, you kind of live it and you see it, but just at the same time, I just take a step back and I'm just like, wow. It's kind of a shame, really. It's like, does it really take for leaders who work in policy to really make change happen? So, we always talk about change, but we have to be about it. And I think we're slowly getting there, but the fact that you guys just had the audacity, just like, this is the data, I'm gonna just put it in your face, see it, this is really happening. It's just disheartening for some, not all, I will say that, for some leaders to take action. It's like, students have been telling you this for many years. Does it really take numbers for you to take action? So that's just my reaction, just from seeing those numbers, is I've lived it. Many of us in this room have lived it, way before I was even born. But does it really take numbers for somebody to take action? And I think if we are part of the system as policymakers and as educators, if you're part of the system, it's because you care about it. So let's make change happen. Don't just talk about it, be about it.
I think I already spoke, but well, a couple of things come to mind. When Michelle spoke about her experience in college, she mentioned Professor Calderon, and Professor Calderon meant a lot to you. I would say that when faculty, because faculty hiring is done by faculty, and I'm not sure that faculty think about that issue of recognition as something that's important. They are primarily looking at, like I said, at experience and sometimes, questionable definitions of merit. But so I think that that's part of the problem. They're not thinking how will the 43% Latinx students that we have in this college see themselves in this faculty candidate. So that's one issue. The other one is that a lot of diversity, it's a tricky word, because for some people, diversity is about a lot of things other than race and ethnicity. So like, for instance, diversity in intellectual thought, is used as, that's the kind of diversity that I would like, people will say. So in fact, in a survey that we recently gave, only 17% of the respondents said that it was important to hire faculty of the same race and to hire a racial diverse faculty. So I think we have a lot of work to do to make the case. So Michelle, would you like to?
I feel like I spoke and presented, so I'd like to give the floor to President Martinez.
Okay, again, good afternoon, everyone. What I thought I would do is provide you a little bit of a student perspective as to why diversity is so significant. I often interact with students, and students always tell me, I always ask them, why are you here? How come you chose East LA College to come and study here? Their responses are interesting. One response I always hear is, I feel at home at East LA College. I feel welcome. I feel that I can achieve more here at East LA College. I go on to ask them why, and in many ways, the research that was done here reaffirms a lot of what, again, we see and hear from our students. The research indicates that when students see a diverse faculty, when students see a diverse classified staff, a diverse management, it does impact them. It impacts them because they see someone that probably understands them really well. They understand them. They feel good about that person, that person will know what is wrong and what is right, and they will guide them. They will mentor them. Many young people come to our campus because that's what they're looking for. Are they looking to learn? Sure they are. They're also looking to be mentored. They're looking to be guided. And so they feel comfortable in an environment, in a campus like East LA College, because they feel that every day. In many ways, the diversity of our campus also becomes a recruitment tool. It's one major reason students come to East LA College. It's one major reason we have so many students here. It's also a recruitment tool, by the way, when we recruit faculty. Because faculty, when they come and they interview, usually by the time the final interviews get to me, so I basically interview the final 3 candidates. So whenever we start a search, and sometimes these searches, they start with a pool of anywhere from 100 to 150 individuals who apply for a job. And then that pool gets narrowed down to the final 3, and they come to me. And many times the candidates often tell me, and I ask them, why East LA College? Why are you interested in this campus? And many then give me the same responses. I feel at home here. I like it here. I feel that people know me. And so in many ways, many faculty choose to come to a campus like this one because of its diversity. So, so I'm really excited as to what, could be delivered in essence, or what could be the product of having a diverse campus. Not only should we, I think, do it for moral reasons, which the research clearly indicates that, but also we should do it because it's a good thing for our students. They want to be here. It's a good thing for our classified staff. Just one more thing, many times we have transfers. in transfers from other of our system. We have 9 colleges in our system. I often see that when I see transfers, I always feel great when they state that they want to come to UCLA College. They usually list the campus as number 1, that this is the campus that they want to come to and work here. And I think a lot of that has to do with how we are and how we look. So I just wanted to make those few points.
Thank you. So what I'd like everyone to do is, if you have a pen, go ahead and raise it up. Okay, great. A bunch of people have pens. So this will be your opportunity to write down any questions that you have for the panel, because I have about a question for each one of them, and then we're going to open it up to the floor for you to be able to ask the questions that you have. So, and I'd like to start with Alexa. And you've held this wonderful role and opportunity of representing students as a trustee. And in doing so, it's allowed you to be really close to students' needs and concerns and what they're talking about and what they're saying. And so we're interested in hearing, what do the students think about the lack of racial and gender diversity in the administration and faculty ranks? We'd love to hear what they're saying.
So I'm going to take this on a different spectrum a little bit because
Okay.
it ties in all together. So during my tenure, I would say it was extremely tough. Tough because it was emotional towards the time of elections. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we've seen a rise of hate, racism, and it kind of started to spin off that conversation with students. Well, you know what? What I see on TV, where I hear on the news, you know, we talk about it in class, so yet why don't I have somebody who represents me or who understands what I'm going through, what are my struggles? I for myself and some of the students I've talked to, some of us were really lucky because we had programs in place. And I just wanted to give a shout out quick to Josefina, who leads the Puente program. I'm actually a Puente alum. So that, because of programs like that and having and ensuring professors who look like me, professors who went through the struggle like me, it created that sense of familia. The same thing with our brothers and sisters with the Emoja program. And then you had other programs, and just recently, LA Harbor College did APAS, which focuses on Asian Pacific Islander students. But that just came up recently, so when students were like, okay, but what about the rest of us who are being left out, who were not always accepted to those programs, because you can only accept a certain amount of number of students in a cohort. So students were like, okay, well, where am I left at? And I also, it's just that sense of being empathetic and sympathetic towards a certain situation. And I think that that's where it started to really spiral off with the start of conversations of the elections. And I kind of hate to bring this out because it's a little taboo to talk about, but let's be honest. It's real, it's happening, and this is something, a concern of our students, and it's all embedded into what we do in the higher educational system.
Thank you for sharing that. And so do you believe then that faculty and administrative diversity helps that?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. There's just no doubt in my mind. I mean, when I went to UCLA, go Bruins, when I only had one Latinx professor, that was my Chicano professor, and when I walked outside of the class, all I saw was majority white professors and students. And again, it's that sense of feeling being like belonging into an institution. Am I, like Michelle says, like she said, do I belong here? Am I smart enough? Am I good enough to be here? And I think that plays a role into mental health as well. So I think that's also an important conversation we need to have. How does that affect the mental health of the student in order for them to really thrive in the higher educational system? Because students already face so many barriers, that's just an extra wall that they need to climb and jump over.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing that. I'd like to turn to Dr. Ben Simone. So
nobody calls me Dr. Ben Simone, just call me Estella.
I always call you Dr. Ben Simone.
Not even
It's just my way of demonstrating respect for my Shiro.
Thank you.
So Estella. So there's a lot of research that says, hey, we know diversity is important. Can lead to all these manifold benefits for students when they're exposed to faculty and administrators who are diverse. So if the research shows this, how come we don't see a change?
You know, Lyndon Johnson, who I know many of you are too young to remember who he is, but he was president in 1964 when we passed the Civil Rights Act. And even though he did not do many good things, the Civil Rights Act was a good thing. And he did it with the help, of course, of Martin Luther King and many others. But one of the things that he said is, with the purpose of this act is to get equality in results and in practice, not in theory. And well, I like that quote because I feel like we still talk about diversity, you know, like we talk about it in theory, but in terms of performing diversity, we seem to struggle with it. And why is that? I think that when it gets too close to our power structures, the tendency for those who are in power is to preserve power and to suggest that we are going to change hiring practices is threatening. And we need, I mean, that is in great part, I think, what is going on. I am on campuses all the time, and I was recently at a community college, not here in Los Angeles, where one of the deans said to me that it was hard to be a white male on the campus. You know? And I just said, if you want to be a dean, you need to be able to take, you know, to feel uncomfortable. But the point is that people are feeling threatened and they want to preserve things as they are. And then the other thing is that, you know, I rarely use the term diversity because I feel that diversity evades the real issue, which to me is about racial, and I'm using racial here at large, equity. It does mean to me that we have to hire more American blacks. We need to hire more Latinx, not like me, who was born in Argentina, but you know, we need to hire more Mexican Americans, more Puerto Ricans, and that's really important, as well as Native, you know, Americans and Asian Americans. But you know, the 4% for blacks, I mean, that equity in part is a function of the underrepresentation of blacks in California in higher education. Do you know where black students are going to college? They're going to the for-profits, 13% in the for-profits. So it's an aberration of the data. So I'll stop there.
No, I mean, that's really helpful. So when you talk about these threats, and people definitely feel threatened, I hear people say that all the time. I'd like to hear Marvin and Michelle respond to that. How do you address those kinds of worries and fears from an administrative perspective and from a policy perspective, knowing that that's a conversation that's going on among white communities?
Well, I think that, you know, first of all, if you're going to be a college president, you have to get used to threats. You have to have the courage to be able to take anything on, especially this really particular issue. You know, just something interesting that I wanted to share with you, because this past weekend, we spent the weekend with a number of the CEOs, the college presidents, up in Monterey. And we were discussing a really important issue called in regards to new funding. And we have 114 colleges, 114 college presidents. I would say there were over 100 presidents there. I was talking with Chancellor Rodriguez, we're both there, and we're both noticing just obviously the lack of diversity amongst fellow CEOs. So much so to where we're noticing as we're walking around, all the African American presidents were sitting at one table, all the Latino presidents sitting at another table, but just you could see the lack of diversity just at that level. And of course, we began to wonder, why is that occurring? And no doubt, the research to me clearly indicates that you have a lack of diversity within the trustees, because it's the trustees who do the hiring of presidents. And I noticed in the research that you've done that out of 72 college districts, 15 are still all white. So they're the ones who have the responsibility of also diversifying presidents. So I think that no doubt we need to diversify trustees. We need to have trustees try to create a pathway to diversify CEOs and make that commitment. Easier said than done. Obviously, we're in the year 2018 and it has not happened. I think we have to keep the pressure. We have to keep the pressure. But again, coming back to having courage and so again, I think that the president on a campus has to be the one to establish that we are going to be committed to diversifying our campus community, from faculty to administrators to classified staff, and you have to do that. And you have to do that also systemically. I have a quote that I use all the time, and the quote that I use all the time is, it's all about the adjuncts. So we really work with our chairs, we really work with our Senate to ensure that I want to see diversity when I get those final 3 candidates. And I think that they are responding to that. In fact, I was just informed that our chairs, we have like 32 department chairs, are currently meeting and they're getting training on how to develop adjunct pools and how to, in essence, forward a diverse pool to all of us. So I think that you have to train people. They might not know how to handle those human resource issues. You also, at the same time, have to emphasize that diversity is what we're looking for. So everyone down the line is beginning to talk about that, and that's why you saw that really diverse pie as we saw up there of faculty. Again, I keep saying it doesn't happen, nothing really happens anywhere by accident. This is not Hollywood, folks. This is not a movie. This is real life. And so you have to be able to provide directions to the campus community and talk about how we're going to get to that goal. And that's where we are today.
Well, I would say on the policy front, I think first it's us getting comfortable talking about it. I mean, I suspect that we're in a room of fairly, supportive leaders. Well, we have to get comfortable calling out racial inequality. It's not something that we're probably used to or want to be doing. But if we're not comfortable calling it out, then how can we expect our presidents to communicate that? So I would say, 1, we have to get comfortable. 2, I think we also have to reframe the conversation. When I started my remarks, I talked about how we shouldn't be sucked into some of the arguments or debates around, well, why is diversity important? We're only hiring the most qualified. I think we have to be, I don't do jiu-jitsu, but I hear that this is the strategy around jiu-jitsu, which is like, how do you use that energy and send it right back out there? And I think that's what we have to do, right? So why does diversity matter? Well, I would pose it back to you. Why do you think that it's acceptable to not have diversity? For us to have a tenured, faculty body that's 70% white when the campus is 70% students of color. And so I think jiu-jitsu some of that, so that we're having the right conversation. And then I think Dr. Ben-Simone can speak a lot to, how we define merit and qualifications is really powerful, because those those practices can continue to exclude people that would be good to have in front of our students. So how do we talk about it in front of policymakers? We are calling it out. So part of the title of the report, which Audrey came up with, was left out. It's intentional. We didn't call it, lack of diversity in higher education. We said left out. We believe people are being left out. And we need to act on that. If people are left out, they can be brought in. They can be included. And so part of it is really being confident in calling it out. The second is we've already met with the top candidates for governor, and we are asking them to commit to racial equity and closing racial equity gaps in higher education. And so I invite you all to join us in demanding that from our next governor. And it can't happen if there's no plan for it to happen, right? And so I think we've tried to be very specific about saying that the economy depends on whether or not we do a better job at educating people of color in California. That's the reality. So some of us may come to this conversation because we believe it's a fundamental moral imperative, or it's a social justice imperative, or some may come to it because simply, it's an economic imperative. We need educated workers. Corporations need educated workers. I've gotten to the point where I don't care how people come to the conversation. If they come to the conversation and they care about doing things better, then that's great. So not everybody's going to be at it from a social justice perspective. So I don't get stuck on that. But I do think that we have to make sure our leaders are held accountable. I like to tell our elected officials is that, we talk about caring about diversity, but what's the action?
I just wanted, since we're here at East LA Community College, which is part of a large district, that we're not speaking about, so hiring is a system. And I would say that if we want to change this, we have to take apart the hiring system in the Los Angeles Community College District. Because the way that the system is organized, it is not necessarily organized to yield equity-minded candidates. And because it is extremely procedural, it is extremely bureaucratic, and it does not allow for asking questions that are out of the norm. So, and I hope I'm not speaking out of place here, but really, the way to change this is to pull apart what we're doing right now. Until we do that, nothing is going to change, because from the way that a job announcement is written to how those candidates, when President Martinez get those 3 candidates, well, there were 130 before that. What happened to them? Who were they? And how did they get weeded out? So I would say that if we're going to change this, we have to start from that point. And I would also say that in terms of data, that colleges should be required to report who applied for the position by race and ethnicity and by gender, because that's the only way that we're going to know who is getting weeded out. And that's really important.
I'm just going to quickly piggyback on that very quickly. So since we're talking about the hiring process and why is it so important to students to have diversity in faculty and staff, so I know some colleges and some districts actually don't allow for students to be part of the hiring process. And the only reason that I brought this up at one is a good professor, what would be good for them. And I think it's important that students just have a seat at the table to be a part of that hiring process, because only they know who would be a best professor for them and for other students like themselves.
Absolutely, that's a good point. And all this really speaks to the system of hiring that continues to reproduce what we're seeing. One of the things that we've seen as part of the work that I do with Frank and Seal is that a lot of colleges have the typical old diversity question, which really doesn't help us advance a lot of these issues. the committee comes, forward, they talk to candidates, say, can you tell me about your experiences in working with diverse student populations, or something to that effect, which in our experience only tells them about their exposure to diversity and not their commitment, and those are two very different things. And so we're not engaging in practices that really get at that. But I want to go back to something that you were pointing out, and you were talking about the importance of having executive leadership that are from communities of color, and how that can help better create, a commitment to hiring people who are diverse. Now, in all cases, that's not going to be something that we see. We're going to see that, boards that have largely white trustees. We're going to see places where a cabinet has a lot of white leadership. So these issues are not solely our issues as people of color, but for them as well. So what responsibility do white leaders have in being advocates for these issues? How do they show up and be allies?
Well, I think that one way to do that is, number one, we have to, as Michelle's saying, we have to be open about talking about these issues. And we have to engage ourselves in that discussion. It's one of those situations, again, just going back to this past weekend, I think you can't help but notice that there's a lack of diversity among CEOs. It's there, you have to be blind not to see it. Do we talk about it? We don't talk about it. It's not discussed at all, even though all of us can see that. So we have to be courageous about opening that kind of discussion. Even within CEOs or even within trustees, because I'm also a member of the Joint Trustees Association there. And it's interesting in that here we are in the year 2018 and we're still don't want to broach that subject. No matter how well educated we were. Again, you have all the CEOs, some of the best educated people in the country. We still don't want to talk about it. So it has really, to me, has nothing to do with your educational levels. It certainly has a lot to do with you having the courage to talk about it and bring it up. So I think that's the first thing that has to happen. Secondly, once you do bring it up, you have to do it within a situation where you hope to come up with some real solutions of how to address it. So, which makes us think, how did all of us eventually become CEOs? Well, all of us became CEOs because we were mentored. There was people that came up to us and put their arm around us and said, hey, we think you can become an outstanding CEO, I'm going to show you the path. That's how it happens. And I think that we have to have an active plan in order to go out and find those key individuals and groom them and put them in a position so they can eventually want to apply and be successful in applying. We do that right now, for example, as I mentioned to you on the campus with faculty. We do that really well with counseling faculty. And we do that also with this. Many of our departments also do that really well. Many of our faculty that are being hired are adjuncts. So I think that, we just have to be able to put these issues on the table so we can have that courageous discussion that we just have to have.
Okay, so this might be a good time to move to questions from the audience. So if you have a question, we have a microphone right here. Just please go ahead and walk up. And what we will ask you to do is, as you ask your question, keep something very important in mind. Ask the question. So we can preamble all we want, but we'll run out of time. So please get directly to the question so that we can have as many as possible.
Buenas tardes. My name is Josefina Canchola. I'm an associate director of the Winter Project. Thank you for the shout out, Mija. You're a wonderful product, an example of it works. And really, I think my question has to do with some of the discussion about hiring. Oftentimes we hear the excuse, there's opportunities, but we don't have candidates of color that are prepared enough or equipped enough to fill those roles, and that's used as an excuse not to hire them. So obviously, the graph really for East LA College was very reflective of the demographics in California. So how do we put into practices, President Martinez in particular, Your policies and what you practice here that obviously is very successful in other systems and in the rest of our community colleges in the state of California.
So I think, a great question, by the way. And so I think the first thing that you have to do is when you, as a college president, get a pool of applicants who are not diverse, you have to say, no, I don't accept that. Take it back. Give me a diverse pool. You have to say that. So I think, but also, I've been lucky. We have not had that many of those situations because we do a lot of that work in the background, so that we can get a pool of individuals who are qualified, who are diverse, and who will know what make outstanding faculty. But I think the first thing anyway you have to do is, as a president, you have to make a stand. You have to set that line and say, this is what we need. We need a better pool of qualified individuals. Other things that we talk about is, how do you develop those committees? And as Dr. Ben Simon stated, it's about the committees. You want to make sure that you have committees that are diverse, that are going to find those applicants, that are going to ensure that the questions that are being developed will make all those individuals shine and be able to move along the path. So no doubt is that the screening committees are very important. Also very important are who is going to be on those committees. You want to make sure that the actual committee is a diverse one. So it does take a lot of time, and effort to do that. And then also by the time they eventually come to me, we include the department chair and as well as the appropriate vice president, so we can make a decision, because I certainly want to be able to ask the department chair and say, how come you're not giving me more diverse people? But like I said, that hasn't happened too much. So no doubt, we try to work it from point A through Z. So the first one is when you advertise a position, you have to advertise it in a way where you're attracting those top candidates. It also has to be flown to those areas where you're going to get those, diverse candidates. Because many times we are a bureaucracy, we have traditional areas where we send the applications to. So you're going to get traditional applicants. So you have to emphasize that when those applications are sent out, that they're sent out to key areas so we get those diverse applicants. But all those key areas are important, because if one of those particular areas falls apart, you're not going to get a diverse pool. So no doubt the process and the system are key, and because you just can't sit on your hands, and I certainly can't do that in my office and expect to get top quality diverse candidates if we don't work that whole system, because that system is very important.
Dr. Wood, I hope that you will also chime in. You've been an excellent moderator, but you're doing amazing work at San Diego State, and I would love to hear your perspective on that question too.
Well, you stole the words out of my mouth. At SDSU, and in the work that we do with community colleges, we see these patterns. Just last night, for example, I was on the phone with a colleague who is at another institution in California and is experiencing some real serious challenges. And they called me, they were crying, they were upset about how they've been treated. And so, when we're having conversations like this, for me, it's always important to remember that these aren't just statistics, these are experiences. These are very challenging experiences for students. They're challenging experiences for faculty and for administrators. And it's particularly when you get into senior level administration, it's a very isolating experience as it is. I also think about, in just kind of synthesizing a lot of this information for me, is one of the takeaways that we've seen with our work on men of color. And so we do a lot of work looking at students who are men of color who are in community colleges. And one of the primary things that we find as a theme, and we found this in the very first study we've done, in almost every college we went to, we find this as a pattern, that when they're walking outside of class, their faculty members might see them and they'll put their head down, they'll pretend to get on the phone, they'll walk the other direction to avoid having interactions with them. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Some of it's, faculty are busy, administrators are busy. Some of it's unconscious bias, some of it's explicit racial bias. And so when we press them further, one of the things that they'll say is, we'll say, okay, well then who do you have interactions with outside of class? And they'll say, typically, well, the janitor, the custodian, the food service worker, the groundskeeper. And we know that one of the reasons for that is these are the people who are most likely, people are gonna look like them. And so when we're talking about these issues, we're talking about an experience that is, emblematic in these numbers, but is something that's very difficult for a lot of our students and for our faculty. I think that there's a lot that we can do about it, but ultimately it takes willpower. And you mentioned a very important point when you said, hey, it really takes, we have to have executive leaders. I don't think the campus personally can be truly successful in doing this work if they don't have the support of their campus leadership. And when I say leadership, I mean the president, faculty senate, staff senate. It looks different in different places, but in general, if you don't have those three groups, there's no way you're going to get it accomplished. Because I've seen in this work administrators who've said, you know what, I'm going to say no, I'm going to reject the pool. I've seen them lose their jobs as presidents, as vice presidents. And so towing the line in this work, we can't forget that, like I said before, this is part of a battle, and so we do lose people as part of this work, and so I think we have to be cognizant of that as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Wood. Actually, that's what I was going to touch on. I'm from Pasadena City College. I'm the MESA director there, Mil Barbares, and I'm here at the invite of my director of equity, Dr. Micaela Mares Tamayo. So I'm here representing Pasadena City College. And I guess my question is exactly on what Dr. Wood was mentioning. I did read the report. I think we had the report because Michelle presented at PCC not too long ago. And we're left out as a classified member. We're not in this study. And that's my people, right? And as a classified member, as a program director, I've been on the equity committee. I've been, the Association of Latino Employees. We founded that because it was us who were really trying to move the needle on those issues. I was actually the one who brought Dr. Ben-Simon and her team out to PCC to do our equity report. And that was because I'm an advocate. I'm a fellow. I went to PCC. I'm a product of the LA school system. I'm a USC alum. But at the same time, I find myself at my detriment fighting an ongoing battle as a bridge builder, checking the gatekeepers. And it's a problem because now, like my fellow colleagues that are classified that move into management, it's difficult for them to continue in towing the line as a manager, because at that point I lose colleagues that are at that line with me because they lose the ability to advocate at a level that I can as a protected member of a union. So that's a problem, and it's not really coming into consideration when we think about these things. As a classified member, I've been at PCC 11 years, I've sat on dozens of hiring committees, managerial hiring committees, because that's all I can sit on. I cannot sit, I classified some, but I can't sit on any faculty hiring committees. And as a program director of a STEM program, I can tell you firsthand that we're hiring the wrong people. And our students can tell you we're hiring the wrong people. I heard news yesterday that we hired the wrong person. And it's really problematic, and I don't know how else we can support that energy of us having that will, that on us to help our students, because we're the ones that are at the front desk a lot of times. We're the ones that are the coordinators, the program coordinators, the outreach recruitment people. How do we become part of this support, and how do we get taken, be taken into consideration when doing a lot of this work, especially the folks that are like the janitors, the folks that are making our students feel at home.
Beautiful question.
I can try to answer in part, at least. We just finished working with a private university here in California, Cal Lutheran, and even though they're not part of this study, what they did is in part what every institution maybe should do. The provost and the president, they're a Hispanic serving institution, decided that they needed to change their faculty makeup, and what we did was we trained 15 faculty members, including the provost, for close to a year, And they're like the equity agents now, and they are spread out into every single search committee. I just saw the statistics for their new hires. Over 50% are Black and Latinx, including a Latina dean. So I would say that one way of changing it is by creating a critical mass of equity agents to put into search committees. We talk about intrusive advising and counseling for students. I suggest that we talk about intrusiveness into search committees.
Yes. Anyone else?
I was just going to say just real quickly, here with the LA College District, we do have a policy where classified staff do sit in the hiring of college presidents, vice presidents, deans, and other staff. And it's great to have them there. It's great to hear that perspective from classified staff. But that was done through negotiations with our union, with our staff guild union. But anyway, it's been, to me, an essential asset, to have classified staff sitting in as we select a college president, as we select a vice president. And to me, it's been working really well.
All right, we'll take this as the last question, and then, was there?
Hello, my name is Nadine Baragan. I had a question that you kind of answered right now. Was a lot of institutions believe hiring a chief diversity officer solves all the problems, and they're the individual that has all the responsibilities, and you mentioned having equity agents, which I think are really great. So I changed my question. What are some of the strategic initiatives that currently exist around inclusivity? Is there some kind of database or some kind of place where shared knowledge is there so that other institutions can take a look at what works and what doesn't work?
Okay, I'm going to be here shameful, and I'm going to put in a plug for an institute that we're having in March. It's in Sacramento. It's a 2-day institute on how to bring equity into faculty hiring. Dr. Luke Wood is one of our keynote speakers, Chancellor Oakley, and President Tui Nguyen from Foothill. And I can tell you that we have created a workbook, and every session in the institute aligns with each aspect of the hiring process. And we have now touched 40 community colleges with this kind of work. But that's a part of what needs to be done.
Last question.
Thank you for permitting the time question. My name is Jeffrey Hernandez, and I'm the president of the Academic Senate. So I'm hearing a lot of this input regarding intrusiveness in the faculty process. I'm thinking, oh no, right? But I'm also a former student here at East LA College, right? And I actually went through a process of being mentored by faculty here and being encouraged to apply. And I've seen so many, as Barbara can attest, so many of our faculty were former students. And some of them were the Sullivans that we heard. So my question really has to do more about really trying to make this a permanent priority in the state. And I recognize the leadership that the campaign played with respect to transfer degrees. And I was wondering if that's been explored at all, about trying to get legislative support so that it isn't the ad hoc success stories, but there's more of a permanent commitment to provide the kind of training systemically. Because I think that's why we're seeing the data at a systemic level, because where there has been progress, it's been ad hoc, hard work, goodwill, but I think we really need to not treat human resources as a side note, but put it up front and center. So I wonder if the campaign has considered any legislative initiatives, because again, good track record already.
Thank you. So our fundamental priority is to secure a commitment from the next governor that 60% of California adults should have some level of post-secondary education. That's what the economy and workforce requires. And that the next governor set goals, not only for the state, but by college, campus, and that implicit in that, explicit in that, is goals to close the equity gaps. So you can never get to 60% attainment for Californians without closing the gap for Latinx, African American, Asian American students. It's impossible because our state is incredibly diverse. Our K-12 student population, Abby, is 77%, 74% of our K-12 students today are students of color. So this is only going to be a bigger and bigger issue. So that is one major policy effort, to be explicit about it. We've taken a position several years ago to overturn the ban on Prop 209. We have a section in our report where we talk about that being used as an excuse. You know, the ban on affirmative action in hiring simply says that you can't use race alone as a criteria. It doesn't stop us from thinking about racial equity mindedness in who we hire and who we bring to the table. So one of the other recommendations is also about college leaders stepping up to the plate and being courageous and ensuring that they're communicating a very clear expectation for how we ensure a racially diverse pool of applicants. So we are going to push hard on that. We hope that you will join us. We've gotten commitment from candidates to the 60% goal. We want their commitment on racial equity gap as well.
All right.
Thank you so much, panel. That was great. Thank you, Professor Wood. Thank you, Mr. Martinez, President Martinez. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy day to be with us for this important conversation. This is a problem that is solvable. And in many cases, it can be solved with leadership quite quickly. This isn't something you won't see in our report that we want to see goals 20 years out or even 20 years out, because this is stuff that can happen today with the right pressure and with the right leadership. And we hope that you take that back to your campuses. You know, this weekend, I'm sure a lot of you watched the Oscars, and I think that it was a real moment for Hollywood around what it means to be inclusive, both on the gender front and on the racial equity front, right? I was so proud to see Coco win. I was so proud to see Guillermo del Toro win. It was such an amazing night, and I was so proud to see women standing in solidarity together on calling for their stories to be told, on calling for more diversity in the ranks of Hollywood. And what we're hoping with this report is that this is higher education's moment. That with the release of this report today, that this is the wake-up call and the rallying call that we need. So join us on social media, right? Let's get Left out there. Let's share the appendices. Look at your college's data. Get it out there. Keep the conversation going. If you want Michelle to be at your campus, you want Estella, you want me, or anyone, we're happy to do it, because we've got to keep the pressure up. We've got to keep the conversation going, or it falls flat. So I know all of you in the room are committed to that, and thank you for being with us today. Help yourself to some photos. Yes, there is a lot.